You remember the two people that came and flew from France to meet with me multiple times in 2015 in LA, 24, I don't know, maybe you wouldn't. When we had the first meeting, you and I in DC. Do you remember the first meeting you and I had in DC? It was me, you, and Siamak Sabatimani, and we had a 3-hour lunch together. I have the pictures. We've talked about this before.
To be honest, I don't recall exactly what we were discussing.
No, the discussion was just it was an introductory discussion, but there were two people that I was speaking to who were with your camp. One guy's name was Reza, and there was another girl, and they were from France.
Right.
I wrote, and I think we've spoken about them before. I'm trying to find it. I wrote a 10-page proposal to you on my sincere thoughts. Did those ever make it to you or no?
Patrick, honestly, I don't remember. It's been long ago.
Because I'm gonna try to find that and send it over privately.
Well,
I don't even want to.
At the time, I think you're referring to the Iran National Council for Free Elections in Iran, which was at the time what we were trying to organize the opposition to say, look, we want free and fair elections in Iran. This regime is not providing us, which explained the reason why we say we need to go beyond this regime so we can have political circumstances in Iran for people to be able to participate in free and fair elections. That was the premise and the basis of that council back then, right around the same time of the Green Movement it was, I think.
I found it. Nazila Golston is who it was. And it was, I found it right now. And if I find this letter, I'm going to send, by the way, this is in 2015.
Yes. Is
when this was, when we had the conversation. And then if I find this letter, I want to forward it to you privately. I'm going to send it to you where it's just you and I for you to read. Because when I think about last 46 years, who has been the most constant voice in helping Iran be free again? If I was, we can't say at the beginning stages, because at the beginning stages you just had a birthday yesterday, right? Happy birthday to you, by the way.
Thank
I think
you.
you're Halloween, right?
Yes, that's
October
correct.
31st.
Yes.
2 days ago, you had a birthday. And when I think about, so you're, I think you're 64, correct, if I'm not mistaken. So when 79, 25, you were 19 at the time. So, and you left a little bit earlier, right? Because you were doing the fighting. And we talked about this last time.
Right.
But if we were to say during that 45 years since 79, the number one draft pick, and I'm using an example of sports, the number one draft pick of somebody that can bring freedom back to Iran has been you. If it's been you, I don't know what other names have been up there, but you've always been the top three during that entire time till today. My only request would be for there to be a more crisper, clear vision and painting the picture of the enemy with a high level of urgency, where there's a bigger turnout and the people are willing to do something. Because I believe if Trump wins on Tuesday, this will be the last chance of you being able to do so, possibly in you and I's lifetime. Maybe we're going to get one more chance in the next 20 years. But if the other side comes in and they're able to do what they're doing, you're not going to find another Trump type of a candidate for at least 20 to 30 years. That kind of a candidate, where Iran fears the way they did with Reagan back in 84 when he got elected, and whatever the year was when they're like, they released the prisoners, and he gave credit to Carter. It's the only thing I'm suggesting to you is to have a little bit more urgency of being able to do that. And if you're going to say you're going to be the guy, be clear, be crisp, and paint the enemy in a way that everybody wants to get behind it. That's an unsolicited advice. You have to do nothing with it. Walk out and say, this guy has no clue what he's talking about, but I'm coming from a place of wanting to see this become a reality.
Okay, but let's talk Turkey.
Please.
It takes two to tango.
Okay.
Fair enough?
But the leader needs to lead.
Okay, but I can only do as much as I can doing my part together with my fellow compatriots.
Okay.
The element that has been missing all these years was not the fact that Iranians are not resilient, not the fact that you say they have given up hope. I say if I had given up hope, they wouldn't still be on the streets fighting, getting shot in the eye.
39% voter turnout, worse than 20 years?
That doesn't mean that I've given up. The fact they are resilient on the streets, but they are also sending a clear signal to the world, we're not going to validate or legitimize the regime by participating in their mock elections. That's the way you ought to be reading it, because I think that's the correct read, not one that are deflated and given up. If they had given up, they'll be at their home and going about quietly into the night.
Cast a clear vision.
But that's just to set up the scenery. So what are we saying? What am I saying representing that alternative and ask that the Iranian people have? What is the ask of the Iranian people from the U.S. government? Let's try to analyze that. Number one, they say, we are your natural allies. You keep throwing us under the bus, ignoring us, and trying to cut a deal with our enemies within the status quo. In what other ways can we tell you that while we've been killed here, repressed here, and we are the people that can come to terms with you, you don't even need to persuade us. We want to be with you. We want to rejoin the free world, but you're not helping us in any way. Every opportunity that we spoke, you have thrown us under the bus. And I think the question is perhaps clearer, should it be President Trump winning the elections in a couple of days as opposed to Kamala Harris, which probably is going to be a continuation of the Biden administration. I have no indication that that has changed drastically in terms of approach. But let's say if it's President Trump, is it going to be a halfway job? You raise it yourself. Is it going to be, okay, enough pressure, they give up on the nuclear, then we can pack our bags and go back home. We don't want to get involved in any conflict. And the Iranian people say, hold on, what about us? What about what will happen to us Iranians? And by the way, again, let me emphasize, Patrick, I'm not talking about this only because it suits and benefits the Iranian people. It will affect every country in our immediate region. I know this because I talk to them. I talk to Israelis, I talk to Arabs, I talk to Lebanese, I talk to Iraqis, I talk to Syrians. I know even Pakistan and Afghanistan, of course not the Taliban, but I can tell you what the sentiments regionally is. A change in Iran will affect everyone positively.
I don't disagree.
Well, I'm not sure if the current apparent things that we can read between the lines of what President Trump has said. No, President Trump, I'm talking about President Trump. Where is it exactly? That's a foggy area. You were telling me that I'm being gray. I think I'm clear as it possibly be.
So let me push back. But let's do this because this is what
we're doing our part, but we cannot do it all by ourselves. I also said one thing to Iranians.
Do you think Bukele did it because U.S. helped him? Do you think Milei did it because U.S. helped him? Do you think Milei and Bukele did it because U.S. got involved and they were able to do something? You think Venezuela being where Venezuela's at, okay? And Maria Corina Machado, who is wanting to free Venezuelans from a dictator like Maduro, who has destroyed an incredible society that was the most beautiful place of people having the most oil in the world. They had wealth. It was just a great, so the people, Venezuelan people are phenomenal people. Do you think that regime's going to fall with just the help, or do you think some of these guys that are making it happen, there's only so much the regime can do? There needs to be somebody that's just a relentless, crazy, direct, visionary, crystal clear that people are going to say, I'm going to go and do something with this here. I just think that's been soft the last few years. And all I'm saying is, if you walk away from this interview and you and I, you're like, you know what? Who the hell does this guy think he is? I'm comfortable with that. If you say, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about, I'm comfortable with that. All this stuff. But if you leave and then all of a sudden everything is boom and, crystal fire, all this stuff that we're hearing, and there's a resurrection of this 39% that goes back to 83%, all I'm saying is I'm creating urgency to know you got 4 years. If it's not 4 years, it's in 20 years. And that 20 years may never come. And if that 20 years never come, you may never in your lifetime be able to go back to Iran, where you have some of the greatest memories of your life with your mother, with your dad, with your siblings, memories of playing outside, flying planes, all the stuff that you did. That may never happen in your lifetime if there's not more urgency. And I'm very comfortable being 100% wrong with what I'm saying. I'm not trying to do this with, for example, I had Eric Prince on. I don't know if you know who Eric Prince is. Eric Prince was on, and he used to be the founder of, is it Blackwater, Rob? Blackwater, I don't know if you're familiar with Eric Prince or not. One of the things I asked him, I said, if you were to be giving the assignment, I don't think this is the one, Rob. I think you got to go to the second one. The first one is the fact that father, you know what I'm talking about. There's two clips. You got to go to the second one. And I asked him a question about what to do with Iran. Here's what his answer was. I'm curious to know what you'll say about this. Go ahead, Rob.
Like some ideas. If we wanted to bring democracy back to Iran, and whether it's a revolution and change the regime.
Come on, man.
How would you go about doing it, Eric?
Of course I've thought about that. But you think I'm going to talk about it on camera?
Give me 3 things. I mean, it's just this. First of all, we have a small podcast. Probably 17 people will watch this, okay? And the 17 people that watch it, they're all going to be Iranian, just so you know that. But if I know you can't, do you in your mind know? Like, do you?
I know exactly what I do.
You know exactly what you would do.
Absolutely.
Who else knows?
Some of my friends.
Okay, good. So what I'm saying is,
so if I get clipped, the mission will continue.
That's not what I'm saying.
Sure.
What I'm asking is like,
no. Look, think about it this way: Reagan took office in 1981, and he sat in the Oval Office because we'd had a policy of containment for 35 years, and he said, "Enough. We're going to fuck the commies. We're going to go at them economically, politically, culturally, socially. In all ways, we push back."
I remember that speech. Fuck the commies. It was
no.
I get what you're saying. I'm with you.
No, but
maybe he said it behind closed doors.
Watch my podcast.
Yeah.
Off Leash with Eric Prince, and you see Jack Wheeler.
Put the link below, by the way, so the audience can find it.
Jack Wheeler was the guy that went abroad and brought back all the ideas which became the Reagan Doctrine for all the places to push back on the Soviets. And I mean, he's the closest thing to a real life Indiana Jones. Anyway, I digress. What they did, what the U.S., working in concert with the Catholic Church and MI6 in Poland, provided communications equipment to the shipyard workers, the Solidarity Movement, students, farmers, the church, all sorts of communications, and that the means to communicate is essential. There's a fantastic book called The Dictator's Handbook.
You can pause it right
Great
now. It's
book.
actually a very good book. Dictator's Handbook's a very good book. So the reason why I asked him this question is because U.S. military is probably not going to get involved. They're just not going to get involved.
They don't need to get involved.
Right. But if they don't need to get involved, and Iranians are sitting there thinking their vote doesn't matter anyways, 39% turnout, you're going to need to find a creative way to get in there to do something outside of the way that it's been, right? How is that strategy going to be just without U.S. military involvement? When I asked him, he's a private military contractor. He's done a lot of work for a lot of different people. I think one of the biggest contract he got was a $600 million contract, Rob, if I'm not mistaken, with the CIA. This guy was one of the most hated guys in America, right? Have you thought about anything like this with PMCs?
Look, let me go back to what you were pointing at before. Part of the reason I enjoy so much popularity, respect, and support by Iranians, including the Gen Z, is because I've stayed the course for 44 years. When I was first in Cairo sending my first message to Iran, at that time, the Carter administration brought pressure to impeach the satellite transmission to be made so that people in Iran could hear my message. Okay? So I never depended on any foreign support in order for us to achieve our freedom. In fact, I've been telling my fellow Iranians we should never depend on anybody else than ourselves. But it would be so much easier for us to succeed if we had support from the outside world. That's the game changer. Look, Nelson Mandela could tell you this if he was still alive. Lech Walesa, Václav Havel could tell you how different it was because they actually had support. When was people like Sakharov or for that matter, the dissidents in the Soviet Union in Siberia lose hope talking about Ronald Reagan? The day he called Russia an evil empire. Yes, I've been saying that. Twice we've seen how the West prevailed during the Second World War, putting an end to the Nazis because you had a Roosevelt in Washington and a Winston Churchill in London. And then you had Ronald Reagan in Washington and Margaret Thatcher in London. Today, facing Putin and Xi in China and Russia, what is the equivalent in the Western world? We shouldn't be surprised, therefore, that regimes like the one in Iran survive all these years because A, the misread on their attitude and nature was a big flaw. But now in 2024, when people in Iran are on the street fighting the fight, they know that I'm not a miracle worker. They know that we need to have some foreign support. They know that I'm not sitting back waiting for some military coup to occur for us to succeed, because I've said that. I said we don't require any of that. What I did say, however, and continue to say, and this is my message to both candidates that in 2 or 3 days will end up winning the elections in the US, is understand where Iran and Iranians are today. Understand where the Iranian people are and where the regime is. You should focus on the Iranian people for the first time in 45 years, as you put it, as opposed to focus on the regime and what should we do with this regime. Because the regime will never give you the solution to the problem. The Iranian people, on the other hand, will. My entire strategy is based on the Iranian people prevailing over this regime, because they'll be the first one to tell you and I and the rest of the world how similar in thinking and values they are with Americans, with French, with Swedes, people living in free countries. We have absorbed all of that. We are dying to get there. And the only obstacle between us and the free world is this regime. So, what is our ask, therefore, from the would-be next government? And I agree with you that we don't have all the time in the world. So, that's exactly where we have to have a meeting of minds. So far, we've been running on parallel tracks. This is only this much that I and my fellow compatriots could do under the best of circumstances. Is it enough to tip the balance? I don't know. History will tell us, but I can tell you one thing. We can increase dramatically our chances of success if this time we have government to say, we had enough with this regime. It is time we look at the Iranian people in an alternative. And let's give them a chance to succeed, as opposed to give a regime a chance to change its behavior. If that shift of strategy begins to be marked in terms of American foreign policy, we're finally getting in a direction that could lead to a proper solution.
What do you think about what Eric Prince said, private military contractor?
Well, I don't know what he said because I don't understand what was the substance of it.
The idea of using a PMC to go inside and, raising enough money to be able to have someone like him go help with the regime. Have those thoughts ever crossed your mind or no?
Well, are we talking about sort of covert operations and coup plots and that kind of stuff? I don't think that the change in Iran is occurring through those means. But look, we saw what happened in Iraq and the de-Baathification process. Nothing to replace it with, basically living to some kind of a failed state solution. I don't think that's the problem in Iran. Look, for the most part, and in a scenario of survivability post-regime change, a lot of it depends on, as long as elements that don't have their hands soiled in the blood of the Iranian people that will have to face justice one day. But imagine how much you can maximize defections by telling those elements that they can survive regime change, that they don't need to stick with this regime to the bitter end, thinking that we are coming back with revenge and want to settle score with the people who repressed us for 44 years. Iranians are tired of war, of conflict, of repression. They want to be able to breathe and free and live normally, but they need to be given an opportunity. We're bringing structure. We're bringing principles of rule of law. We're bringing elements that are the prerequisites to what modern society depend on to survive. That discipline, that understanding, I believe, exists in Iran. Don't think that the Iranian people have been brainwashed. In fact, you mentioned something that was interesting. In your own childhood, that you were raised in a climate that in schools they were teaching you to chant slogans of death to America and this and that. And a lot of the feedback I get from today's Gen Z, young Iranians in their teens or early 20s, they say we were all subject to that. But the gig is up. We know the truth. We've done our own due diligence.
It is, but
we understand our history. So. Yeah. The elements for change, the desire for change, and the understanding for change is there. How do you further motivate them? How do you further empower them is exactly what I'm talking about. This is not rhetoric. How can you empower people to actually succeed against extremely repressive regimes?
So I've been working on
this. It's not going to be cool by some special ops undercover things. I don't think that's the solution.
If you were interested in this topic with Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi, odds are you're Middle Eastern, maybe you're Iranian, Armenian, Persian, maybe you're living in the Middle East, or maybe you're an American that wants peace in the Middle East. The last 13 years, I wrote this book called The Academy. It's a very interesting thing. I talk about his father. I talk about moments why the revolution took place with this character named Asher, who is half Assyrian, half Armenian, and he gets recruited to the secret society. And the villain in the book is the former deputy director of Savak, who is in the book breaking down why the fall of Iran took place, what mistakes that were made. And very interesting what happened when I wrote this book. I never wanted to publish this book until I finished building my insurance company. I published a couple months ago. Something very strange happened when I was at the tail end of finishing this book. I get a call from somebody saying the former deputy director of Savak wants to have a call with you. I said, the former who? Deputy director of Savak. They don't know the villain is in this book. That person had read the book. I have a Zoom with the deputy director of Savak. He reads the book, calls me back immediately. I need to have another part 2 with you. Did you write this book about me? Am I the villain in the book? I need to come and meet with you face to face. He comes to my house. My dad meets him. My wife meets him. We have an 8-9 hour meeting together at the house because of what perspective he had that caused Iran to fall. Some of that is documented in this book. Again, this is a fiction book based on true stories. If the topic of Iran, the revolution, leadership interests you, I think you would really enjoy reading this book, The Academy. You can go to Amazon or a QR code here to order the book. I look forward to having you read it and posting a review on Amazon because I read every single one of them. Enjoy the read. If you enjoyed this video, you want to watch more videos like this, click here. And if you want to watch the entire podcast, click here.